Welcome to Talk is Sheep, the official podcast of the Wild Sheep Society of British Columbia. Brought to you by our title sponsor, Mountain Tough Fitness Lab. Come along with us as we take conversations that matter to you into the high alpine. We have partnered with Mountain Tough Fitness Lab to help get you in shape and mentally stronger. Whether you're a veteran hunter or just starting out, the Mountain Tough app will take you to the next level. We personally train using the Mountain Tough programs, and we believe in it so much that we want to give you 6 weeks for free using code SHEEPBC. That's SHEEPBC. Check out Mountain Tough Fitness Lab. You won't be disappointed. Good day, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Talk is Sheep. This is a special episode that we're dropping around the British Columbia election. Election day is October 19th. We say it lots on the podcast. Get out and vote. Learn some of the issues. We're just going to throw a little disclaimer out here at the start of the show that the opinions expressed on this podcast are of the individuals alone. They don't represent the position of the Wild Sheep Society of BC as a not-for-profit. We are non-partisan. We can go after issues, but we can't go after parties. So we're non-partisan, and they're not reflective of the society's stance in any way, shape, or form, regardless of what any of the individuals on the call say today. So enjoy the podcast. And again, make sure you get out, do your part, and support healthy ecosystems, and make sure you vote the right way to support wild sheep and healthy wildlife. This episode is sponsored by our conservation partner, Gunworks. Thank you, Sitka Gear and Gunworks, for investing in healthy wildlife and sustainable ecosystems. Good day, gentlemen. Good evening, I guess. We're 10 days out to a provincial election, and we thought we'd get the team together and chat a little bit about what's going on in the world of politics and see what's new with the election. So, of course, Gregory's on, looking mighty fine in his beard, and he's
Spelled.
Oh, and I just got a phone call actually, it's on the podcast. This whole thing about you buying whiskey's catching on. I'm just letting you know right now.
Oh,
so.
yeah.
Oh,
I did the heard the one earlier today, and yeah, he called you on it. I heard Greg is buying whiskey.
That's fantastic.
Don't tell his wife. And today we got a special guest, Steve. Awesome, Steve Hamilton, host of Wild Talk. Of course, our conservation partner, Wild TV. And Steve, you're no stranger to Talk is Sheep, obviously co-host previously and got booted out by the big guy here. So, but obviously you're deeply rooted with politics in British Columbia. You've been quite involved with a ton of stuff, ton of work you've done in the province. And so, today was an opportunity for us to get together. Election's 10 days out, and we're going to talk a little bit about wildlife management in the province, some politics. We're not going to get too deep in the weeds, but I think it's going to be worthwhile talking about some of the policies that we're hearing about from the parties, and then more importantly, why we should be getting involved. So for those of you outside of BC, we do apologize a little bit, but not really, because honestly, for those south of the border, you got a big election coming up here in a couple months, so you guys are not too far off the hook. And then, of course, federally, we're going to have an election here in Canada. And I think it's pretty safe to say, and I'd love to hear from you guys, our elected officials do matter. They matter for policies, and they certainly matter for fish and wildlife. And we've seen that very clearly. Short time I've been involved, I've seen it very clearly. And it's really important that we have good people at the helm.
Yeah, I agree. If we want to dial it back, going back, 10 years? Officially, the three of us met doing something very similar to this when we said, you know what, we've had enough of the way government is not reacting to resident hunters and conservationists around the province. And we got together and we said, you know what, and we made some big moves, and we actually got government to change policy as written. So it is possible. And yeah, I'll just throw a quick correction out there. We do go to the polls officially in 10 days, but the advance polls open tomorrow, the October 10th. So we do have a week worth of elections coming up. So it's time to get out there.
Yeah, and there's no excuse, right? There's a plethora of opportunities to vote. There's all kinds of stuff. There's advanced polls. Shoot, I think you can vote on the internet these days. Like I'm not exactly sure how that works, but there's no excuse, right? There's just a unlimited amount. Certainly, you can do your mail-in ballots and all that sort of stuff. So, anyone that says they couldn't vote or you didn't vote because you chose not to, and so the key takeaway there is get involved. Now, part B is who the hell do you vote for? And that's always a quagmire. So, before we jumped on tonight, I knew we were going to talk about the stuff, and I wanted to talk a little bit about the different parties and what they're standing for. And there's been a bit of a shakeup here in BC. And honestly, I think some of our listeners maybe aren't fully aware of what's happened with the United Party effectively merging with the Conservative Party. And so, when you go to the polls and you're looking for a United ballot, good luck. You're not going to find it. So let's jump into some of the things we need to talk about. How do we want to start this? So I guess maybe we start with who's currently at the helm and what's going on there. So the NDP party, any major changes or anything we're seeing coming out of the NDP right now relating to fish and wildlife moving forward? I feel like they've flip-flopped on some policies. Certainly they have on carbon tax and a few things like that. Anyone hearing anything different on issues relating to wildlife?
I think we should start right at the beginning and lay it out there that there is a distinct difference between federal and provincial, right? The federal Conservatives are not the BC Conservatives, and the former BC Liberals, BC United, are not JT and everybody from back east. So when you're casting your vote, make sure that you delineate the difference, and you're not looking for a name and going, shit, that's not on my ballot card. I thought this person would be. So let's start there. But if you want to really dial down into who's doing what and who's not doing what, we can go back 50 years. None of the governments have given a shit about wildlife for over 50 years. It's the only incarnation of ministry that has not seen an increase in funding. Like when times are good, Fish and Wildlife doesn't get money. When times are bad, Fish and Wildlife doesn't get money, right? It's not that healthcare and education, highways, etc., get the money. It's everything but Fish and Wildlife, right? So it's time to hold government accountable. And I can rant and ramble about that, but if we want to start at the beginning and talk about who's doing what and who's not doing what, there's there's lots. So far, I've been doing some research, and there's four main things that are being pushed, right? And anybody that's involved with hunting and sport shooting and conservation, angling, and just cares about wildlife should be pushing for an agency outside of government, legislated objectives with these dollars, right? If it's all fine and dandy to say we want to dedicate $200 million to fish and wildlife, but what does that look like when you don't have legislated objectives, right? That money gets thrown around everywhere. We saw it a few years ago where they said, oh, we're going to give $30 million or whatever it is to caribou. And that didn't do squat because it wasn't legislated. Then the other one, public access to public resources needs to be legislated. And when you bring those three main things together, that is what a policy needs to be built around. And so far, as of a couple of weeks ago, Conservatives have not committed. Well, Conservatives and the NDP have not committed to wildlife management being managed outside of government. They want to keep it inside government. And that is a major problem. When you're having government pull the levers, such as LEH, we're not really getting something that's based in science. And I'm sure we'll go off on a 2017 tangent soon. Conservatives have put into their policy that they are prepared to commit to funding dedicated with legislated objectives. So that's a good one. NDP, they're not. Public access in law, Conservatives are there. NDP didn't answer that question strategically. So that kind of throws you right there. So the NDP so far has got 3 negative. Greens have not responded or put out a policy platform yet that I have seen as the time of recording. And yeah, the ones that are hitting the markers right now are the Conservatives.
Well, it is interesting with the Greens. I've seen that they do talk a little bit about endangered species. So you go to their website and we kind of look through and try and find out. They do talk about they have a plan for endangered species, prioritizing wildlife and habitat, including the creation of an endangered species law. So I've heard that both provincially, I think the Conservatives are talking about doing that they want endangered species law in BC, and so do the Greens. They talk about increasing funding, and they talk about expanding CO services, and then they talk lots about wild salmon and fish farms, stuff like that. So
good. Have they said they want to legislate this stuff though?
No, they have not. They just talk about prioritizing, and well, I want to prioritize making more money in the future. I want to prioritize having breakfast for tomorrow morning, right? So you're absolutely right. Without sort of talking more about legislated, and that's a tough road to hoe, right? Like the bureaucrats do not like that. They do not want that, right? And that's a big machine within government. But that's where it takes the political will of an elected official to move the needle on that, because the bureaucrats will never do that, right?
Yeah. A good friend of mine and somebody you know as well, and so does Greg, Michael Schneider, has said for years that moose don't eat money. And that's true. You can throw millions of dollars at them and it doesn't do squat unless you say, with this money, we are going to do X, Y, Z, and then legislate it, because you can have these targets. But if you're not holding them accountable and got these checks and balances, we're spinning our wheels, and that's where we are. Here's another fun fact. You go back 60 years, every 4 years, there's promises to increase funding, dedicate funding, whatever you want to call it, for the last 60 years in every platform. And none of that's ever happened. What happens every 4 years? These promises are made.
Yeah, absolutely. Do you have the number? Do you have what number the government says they spend on fish and wildlife in the province? Do you have a rough number? And what we need? I think the number we need is like 300 million or something a year is what they are.
Roughly 75.
Yeah.
Is what we get. And it's bugger all. We need a minimum 200. Minimum 200. Right now we're seeing COs that are running on shoestring budgets. We're seeing government employees that are being told that they're not allowed to use their cell phone outside of work hours, right? Travel's being cut. How the hell are you going to manage wildlife when you can't even answer your cell phone?
Yeah, absolutely. So if we've got this, so we talk about the Conservatives, right? They're saying dedicating funding for wildlife, dedicated funding. Where's this money going to come from? Because if we've got 75 million and we're woefully inadequate, where are we going to find the funding for this? So it's pie in the sky. It's all wonderful until you go and do the budget and you say, well, are you going to take it from healthcare? Are you going to take it from, child services? Where's this money coming from? So where do they find that money?
Well, right now there's a few avenues there. One, we could be pushing for and should be pushing for higher fines when it comes to wildlife infractions. None of this, somebody goes out and shoots an underage, undersized sheep and then does whatever with it and then only gets a $375 ticket. That's bullshit, right? I'm looking at a beautiful stone behind you on the wall there. They're out there, right? Taking from a resource that we care about. $375 ticket for taking a ram illegally, and that's bugger all, right? These fines, for one, should be higher and then dedicated back to the resource. Other things could do was increase. I know not a lot of people want to hear it, but if you increase, was it $20 for a moose tag? Double it, right? Double it to $40, $50 for residents, and do the same with deer. Increase your license fees, increase your tag fees, dedicate that back to the resource. Same way they kind of do with freshwater fisheries, right? There's millions to be had right there. If we doubled our tag fees, you're taking your 75 and you're making 150 right there.
Well, and that's the question: is when's the last time we've seen increase in fees for
Oh,
tags or for like surcharges
decades.
or any of that stuff? Nothing.
Decades.
Like you look at inflation, that things have doubled over the last decade, right? And there's been zero increase in tags or any of that stuff. I think there was a modest increase in fines recently, but we're talking like 50,
Overall.
$100. And I'm with you, Steve. I feel like we should be throwing the book at it. But I do know that when we're in meetings with government officials, they push back on that all the time. They're like, no, because there won't be reporting. There won't be this. There won't be that. And we're like, you know what? The animal's still dead. Like, hold people accountable. Like, whether or not it gets reported or not, when they do get caught, there should be a more serious fine for it. And, but we get pushback on that all the time.
Yeah, we're watching a major case go through, behind the scenes right now of somebody that's been charged 57 times with wildlife infractions in the last year, cross-border hunting, right? BC, Alberta. And what do you think is going to come out of that? If you made each one of those charges stick and $1,000, that's 57 grand right there. Then that's a hell of an incentive to say, you know what, I should probably not be doing what I'm doing. Now imagine doubling, tripling, quadrupling those fines. Let's really make these things hurt. No more of this, I'm going to lose my hunting license here in BC and then go over to Manitoba and whack a deer and then come back here with no ill effects, right? There's so many people that skirt the rules, and we need to start throwing the book at them. That's what I would do immediately. There's double, triple, quadruple your fines and dedicate it to the resource. But that with legislating those objectives. Start there.
Yeah, well said. Okay, let's jump into two things that are a little bit more controversial. Issues around party stances on science-based wildlife management. We talked about the grizzly bear in 2017, or you alluded to 2017. So science-based wildlife management. So I'm seeing the conservatives they're saying, yeah, to science-based decision-making. What are the NDP and the Greens saying on that? Do you have anything on that?
Again, it depends, right? Who you can ask. But formally, the Greens have said nothing that I have seen, and the NDP, big fat no, they dodged the question. They didn't say no, we're not going to do that, but they did the typical political speak. We commit to working with wildlife, with British Columbians, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, and another one that's a bit controversial, 30 by 30. So obviously the BC NDP are highly committed to that. I know John early on was saying that he didn't support 30 by 30. What's the latest stance on that from the Conservatives? Have you got any details on that? I haven't really seen much on it.
No, they're the dial back to the talking about science-based wildlife management there in 2017. I actually had the candidate for the Conservatives show up at my door Sunday, whatever it was. He was on his way to a meeting and he wanted to come talk to me face to face about wildlife. And was one of the first things I said is, what are you guys committing to? And he says, our platform is out tomorrow, meaning Monday. And we are committing to science-based wildlife management. And he said, you know what? I don't hunt, but the worst thing we ever could have done for wildlife management was get rid of the grizzly hunt. And that was something I didn't prime him with. So yeah, he's a northern guy and hunting is quite prevalent up here. So I don't know how a candidate going to your door down there in the Lorne and on the island would be received by saying, yeah, you know what? We want to open up the grizzly bear hunt. But the key to me there was we need to get away from the emotion and get back to the science-based wildlife management. And that's what the Conservatives are committing to, is what he told me.
Well, it was interesting this morning. I met with the Conservative candidate and I didn't bring up the grizzly bear. I said nothing about it. And he said, there's grizzly bears that are running amok on the North Island and they're problematic and we have no tools to manage them. And, he wasn't advocating for a hunt, but he was recognizing the fact that we've lost the ability to more effectively manage them. And he brought up the issue. But they're not officially, when you look at the media, I see the NDP actually say, Rustad's bringing back the grizzly bear hunt. I've heard them say that. But I've never heard Rustad say that. So I
Nope.
think that's a bit of a misnomer, right?
Yeah. What they're committing to is science-based wildlife management, and I've never actually heard John on the record say it,
Yeah.
but I met with him in the past,
Right.
so you can kind of extrapolate a little bit there of how conversations went. I don't want to put words in his mouth off the record, but the science-based wildlife management is something they're committing to, and they realize where the ball has been dropped. And hell, you'll know this as well. When we're talking about managing with science, when they cut the grizzly hunt in 2017, there was it 15 full-time employees that were managing grizzly bears? They were the most studied animal we have in the province. They cut that. We're down to one. So how the hell are we managing a species, an iconic species, when we're pulling levers that do nothing except remove the science from these animals? So.
Okay. Just before we go any further, we should have done this at the start. We should have sent out a disclaimer. We're talking about science-based wildlife management. We're talking about the election. The society is not taking a stance on any of these candidates. What we are doing is we're talking about the policies, and there may be, Steve, you may have an opinion. That's your opinion only. It's not the society's not advocating. What we're advocating for is that we vote in this election. That's what and educate yourself, and that's why we're talking about it. Yeah. And that's what we're talking about today is some of these issues. And we're speaking on what we know, right? I actually went and met today with one of the candidates, and I put in a request for all three. And just for the record, I've actually asked the Premier Eby on the podcast, and I've asked John Rustad on the podcast. So I'm bipartisan in that regard. They haven't come on. Nobody's committed yet, but maybe we will get the Premier on here. I'm not feeling very optimistic about it, but regardless,
listen to this podcast first.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, but my point is that we're not advocating for any particular party. We want you to understand some of the issues that are out there, some of the positions. I've done quite a bit of research, and some of this is helping me form an opinion too, getting Steve's perspective, Greg's perspective on what the right thing to do is. And, and there's one thing to be voting for your candidate, but then also be thinking strategically too, right? Like, as we know, we run with a majority government that forms government, and we've seen the coalition that happened before, right? We had the Green Party propping up the NDP, and under the guise of the grizzly bear. I don't know, that's what we were told, right? That the NDP flipped on the grizzly bear closure because the Greens demanded that as part of the coalition. Is that true? I don't know. That's what I've heard. What's your guys' perspective on that?
Oh yeah, I was told the same thing.
Right.
It was no coincidence that we lost the grizzly hunt, and then Site C was pushed through. Right. There was an exchange there of, hey, you support this, we'll support that, and everything's there that screams it. And especially when former Premier John Horgan is on the record, there's a cutesy video that says, it's time to end the grizzly bear trophy hunt in British Columbia. Well, why throw in the word trophy, right? We know that. I'll rant about grizzly bears and closing that hunt. It was such a political crap move when the former minister as well said it's not socially acceptable to hunt grizzly bears in British Columbia. When he says that right there, it's not socially acceptable. I've said this in countless presentations. He says it's not socially acceptable to hunt grizzly bears. What I hear is that if we don't close the grizzly hunt, you're not voting for us anymore. That's what it is.
Yeah.
Especially
when can't argue with that.
Yeah, when they're pushing back with the narrative about don't let John Rustad open up the trophy grizzly hunt. Why is that even a soundbite if you're going to back science-based wildlife management? It's not.
And they're not talking to people who are living with grizzlies and dealing with the problems and, having to worry about their animals and their livelihoods. And yeah, they need to talk to the people that live with them, not the folks in the city.
I'm showing them the screenshot of it's strategically a cub grizzly bear as well. And it says, don't let John Rustad bring back the trophy hunt.
I'm impressed they actually used a grizzly bear photo.
Yeah, I'm shocked it's a bear. I'm not going to be wrong. I'm not going to be pulling any punches with that. It's a bear. It's the right species. That's a win. That's a win.
Oh, okay. So let's just go back it up a little bit and talk about sort of what's happened on the landscape over the last year. So, like you said, Steve, there's federal and there's provincial. It's a provincial election. So these are provincial parties. And so we got the NDP. Nothing's changed there, except they have a new leader with EB, who's been at the helm now for a year and a half or whatever it's been, took over from John. And then provincially, we had the last election, the leading party that was in the opposition role was the Liberal Party of British Columbia, which is not to be confused with the federal Liberals, like you talked about earlier, Steve. And they rebranded under the guise of the United Party of British Columbia, which was the old BC Liberal Party. That party was struggling in the polls. The rebrand didn't go well. There was a series of things that happened, and basically what happened is John Rustad defected from the United Party, created his own, took over the old name of the Conservative Party, and basically started afresh. He was the only candidate. I think Bruce Banman crossed the floor with him shortly thereafter, and then about 6 weeks ago, a month ago now, the United Party, under the leadership of Kevin Falcon, recognized that the United Party rebrand hadn't gone well and that they weren't being effective. And there was a lot of pressure too, and there was kind of a backroom deal, and the United Party folded, and they basically, a number of the candidates went over to the Conservatives. So now the United Party no longer exists. That said, there are a number of candidates that are sitting as independents. So we look at one guy that's pretty, well-renowned for the wildlife file is a guy like Tom Shapitka. Tom's sitting as an independent in the Kootenays. He's running against a Conservative candidate. So it's going to be an interesting dichotomy there, because there's some of these people that are pretty well now known, like a guy like Shapitka, who's pretty popular. He could easily get elected. But then we got a scenario where do we have a coalition? So we don't have a majority government. So we have some of these individuals that are propping up one part or the other. It could go either way. The Greens could prop up the NDP as well. I guess my point is that I think it's important for us in British Columbia to see what's important, what the party stands for, and be a bit strategic in your voting too. Like, just because you're voting for a certain individual doesn't mean an outcome that you're going to like. If you get one individual that's sitting in the parliament or in the legislature and making decisions that's in favor of wildlife, but they're a sole person, or they're not being propped up with a coalition, they might not be very effective either, right?
Yeah, you bring up a great point there, that there's a lot of name recognition that's going to happen at the polls. People are going to go, oh, Tom Shapitka, boom, and then go, oh, I didn't realize he was an independent. There's also going to be a lot of people that are going to go, oh, XYZ, I don't like him, so I am going to vote for this person. And we've seen that sway elections where we go, oh shit, I didn't vote for who I wanted. I vote for who I didn't want. Right. And that's a major problem. We're seeing that. We've got a couple of big names up here in the north, right? Dan Davies being one. He's sitting as an independent. Mike Bernier is sitting as an independent. And these traditionally have been locked seats, right? For decades, right? So it'll be interesting, really, really interesting to see what's going to happen. So do your research. Don't always be a one platform voter. Just because they say they're going to do this doesn't mean that A, B, C, D are not important. So you might vote in somebody that says, I'll support lowering the voting age to 16. But okay, cool, awesome, like that. But then again, they're throwing out 3 or 4 of your other values that you'd rather see. So that's another important one where people, they become one issue voters, and then we're stuck with a minority government where we're going, oh, damn it, they keep propping each other up and trading off, and yeah, it's ugly.
Yeah, absolutely. So what are the major issues that we need to be watching out for? What's on the radar? So it was one thing I found really interesting is back to this whole United Party thing. They made a major announcement literally 2 weeks before they folded tent, and it looked like it was pretty positive. They were going to put a bunch of money into wildlife. They had a pretty good wildlife policy, from what I understand. I think, Steve, you're a bit more familiar with it because you were involved with Morris on that. So talk a little bit about what that policy was, and is any of that going to trickle over to the Conservative Party, or what's your thought on it?
Yeah, I had my nose in some of that stuff, we'll say, but it was looking great. All those points that I talked about were the main party issues were addressed in it, and we have seen some of them come over to some parties. Be wary of some of these wordings where they like to dance around, right? They're not going to come right out and say that they will. I'm talking about all parties for all elections. They're not going to come right out and say, we're going to do this. They like that political speak. So talk with your candidates, talk with your incumbents, and get it in writing, right? That's more important than anything. Well, so they get in, you can hold them to their feet to the fire 2 years in and go, hey, you know what? We had a chat and you said that we were going to do this. Kyle, you can back this one up. Greg, you can as well. Every single politician over the decade we've known each other has said the same thing. If hunters, anglers, sport shooters, and conservationists got together and came with a united message, and all that message is it's time to put wildlife at the top, we would hold the vote, right? We've got, God, what is it? 316 some odd thousand PAL holders in BC, 300,000 freshwater fishing license holders, damn near 300,000 saltwater license holders, and God, was it 115, 120,000 like hunting license holders? Obviously, there's going to be some crossover there, and some people that are unable to vote, just they choose not to, or they're underage. But imagine if we had 80,000 of those numbers show up and said, you know what? We've had it. We saw it 3 years ago now, where we did the Act Now. We had 50,000 signatures that were presented on the steps of the legislature by you, Kyle, and a couple others, right? And politicians went, wow, that's quite a stack of signatures. But here we are 3 years later, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of recycling we need to do. So maybe you're the reason that we got plastic straws banned, right? Right?
Sure.
We realize that we need to start using paper products. So, but that's the point, right? Is if we can put 50,000 signatures together, why can't we get 25,000 people to meet with their elected officials, to get out and vote, and vote not so much strategically, but just to freaking vote?
Mm-hmm.
I think we're going to see. I do think we're going to see a record turnout this election, though. There's been a lot of people online that are saying, you know what, I've had it with this government, I've had it with this person, I've had it with that government, and I get a lot of questions. Well, how do I vote? How do I register? And some of these people that I get these questions from are in their 40s, and you don't know how to vote yet. That's a problem, right? And I hope to God that hunters, anglers, and sport shooters are gonna start to wake up in the next 10 days, right? Because D-Day is 10 days out as we record this.
And it's not unfathomable to carry an election, and especially if you have in a riding or an area and you get 500 hunters that go and vote for an issue on, because how many elections are they can't call it on the night, right? They have to count the ballots the next day, or they have to do a recount because it's that close. And it happens every election, and in numerous different ridings or different areas. So the key takeaway there is, everyone, and I was definitely part of that, where it's like, well, my vote doesn't matter. And it sure as hell does. It definitely is going to matter. And yeah, there's some ridings that, you're not probably going to have that much influence on, but if you're not sure of, and especially now in this current political environment with what's going on with these changing parties, and everything going on, and there's a lot of frustration right now. You can just see it in the media with this current government, right? It's just a fact. This is not me choosing sides. You just turn on the TV and start talking about, affordability, talk about safe streets. You talk about the mental health crisis, all the stuff going on. It doesn't take much discussion to see people are frustrated. So if there's ever going to be a change in the way we do business, it's this year. So your vote actually, Matt, I think you're right, Steve. It matters more this year than it probably ever has.
Yeah, totally agree. It's another thing. You cast a vote. You can now go into your elected official, whether or not it's the one you voted for, and say, "I voted in this last election. You need to hear me." Right, and that's important. That's always. You can back this up again. One of the first questions I'll ask you: are you a constituent of mine? Absolutely. Did you vote? Absolutely. Right. They don't ask if you voted for them. That doesn't matter. It's if you didn't have your say at the polls, why the hell are they going to care when you're sitting in front of them with a stack of papers going, you need to do this? You didn't take 15 minutes out of your day 2 years ago to cast a vote either way. And there's so many issues that are popping up. Do you want to talk about funding for fish and wildlife? the one, when I've done countless presentations around the province over the last couple of years, and the one thing that always got a reaction out of all the attendees, I had elected officials come up to me and go, "Oh my God, I didn't know that," is when you start to talk about the dedicated funding for fish, wildlife, and habitat across the province. So I'll throw some numbers at you here. You've got, let's look at Alaska. That's a direct neighbor of ours. They have 12 huntable big game species. They dedicate $174 million to this. They dedicate $235 per person, $101 per kilometer squared. That's a hell of a return on investment. Got the Yukon, another one of our direct neighbors. They have 10 huntable big game species. Their budget is only $8 million, but when you look at the population, they dedicate $190 per person, and that's about $16 a kilometer square. Not huge, but again, look at the relative population. Then when you look at British Columbia, we do have 17 over-the-counter big game species now. We only dedicate $34 million as of 2016. So it's bugger all. We dedicate $36 per kilometer squared, and that works out to $7 a person. So
how does that compare? Like if we look across North America, we are. I know we're right in the bottom. Are we the bottom? We the lowest?
We're the bottom of the bottom. We're the bottom of the bottom. Idaho is $650 per kilometer square, $87 a person. Montana, $91 a person, 244 kilometers squared. Washington State, $29 a person and $1,000 per kilometer squared. Those are our direct neighbors. We're at $7. So
and Steve, does that even, go down the rabbit hole? Does that include Pittman Robertson? It probably does, and if it's not, you can double that number, right?
Yeah, it does.
Yeah. So that number's doubled, and don't even get me started on that. We won't go down that rabbit hole today, but like what a superior process to have. That's the thing is, and we're looking at it here in BC. We see caribou. The feds had to step in. Here we are shooting wolves from helicopters. Did I say that out loud? It's widely it's widely known. And why is that? Because and it's interesting. So the Greens and the Cons have said they're going to have a species at risk policy in the province because our government didn't have the tools to do what they needed to do to go and remove predators off the landscape to preserve a species. Like they actually had to wait till it triggered. Yeah, species at risk. Now the federal government steps in and they're taking control, right? But the federal government does nothing until then, right? Unfortunately. So
right. Do you want to talk about what happens when you don't dedicate funding? Like hell, we talk about we just saw it over the last few years about moose and caribou in 7B, right? Like moose or caribou was a sustainable harvest rate of about 2 to 3%, and resident harvest out of a population of about 3,000 was only 17, right? But LEH labor needed to be pulled, right? Moose, same thing. Sustainable harvest rate was 5 to 10%. Out of a population of roughly 65,000 average. Resident harvest was about 1,100, so 2%. What did they do? They closed caribou. They reduced the license or the to LEH from a full bull. They put in 3-day open seasons. This was only supposed to be 1 year in an interim, right? And it's ridiculous. We see these levers pulled because these poor bios have no other levers to pull, right? Mm-hmm. There's so many problems with managing wildlife without proper funding and dedicated funding models, right? Very, very rare is it ever brought back when a season is closed. I can't think of a single one where they went, you know what, we reached our objectives, we're going to open it.
And that's where they get a situation where people are like, they'll fight to the death to keep it open, because once it's gone, right? And that's the thing, is if there was this proactive management to it, and we'll belabor this, we've done this before around, LEH and the Kootenays, or a whole bunch of other examples. And that's why people fight to the tooth, to the death, because they know that they'll never get it back. It's gone.
Yeah. We see it every year, and all they can do is reach for that LEH lever, right? Mark Hall drew a brilliant cartoon years ago. You'll probably remember it. It's of an airplane plummeting to the ground, and it says BC hunting regulations on the back, and it goes, I don't know what to do. I keep pulling this and nothing is working. He's obviously pulling on the control, and it says LEH, right? It's like, it's ridiculous how we're stuck with this, and it's a mess. It really is a mess, and that's putting it mildly. We're not even getting into prescription burns and looking across at our neighbors where we see Jasper that was just wiped out, and Kelowna last year wiped out, and this when we got a federal minister that's on the record saying that we need to stop prescription burns, we're fighting a whole other battle uphill. And the only way this is going to change is by getting off your ass and voting, and then holding your elected officials accountable for their promises.
Well, and I think that's one thing that's not worth reinforcing here, is that, we, through our government engagement site, wildsheepsociety.com/get involved, it's got some of the policies or issues that we have are important to us. There's 7, I think, that we list on our page there. So, if you're looking for some ammo to go in, and Steve, to your point, I went in, met with one of the candidates today, and I said, listen, what's your position on these things? And I said, okay. I said, I'm actually not really worried about what we're talking about here today, but I said, you're going to hear from me. If you're elected, I'm going to be back next month, and we're going to talk, and I'm going to hold you accountable, and you're going to know me personally, because I'm going to come back and bug you. And I said, I'm not so concerned about what you're doing today. It's what you're going to be doing a month from now when you get elected. Right. And and he's like, no, that's good. That's exactly what we're looking for. And I think if we're all doing that and we're all advocating, because what happens if we're all singing from the same song sheet? There's 87 elected officials across the province, and if 87 MLAs go in and they're telling their leadership team that, hey, this is the message I'm hearing, and they hear that 4 or 5 different people in their riding, and then they go talk and they say to the premier and the opposition at the time, and everyone's saying the same thing, they have to listen, because they're like, holy crap, they respond to numbers, right? And with 110,000 licensed hunters in the province, plus our spouses and our kids, that's a lot of voting power. We can sway these decisions, but we kind of have to work together. We kind of have to have that lockstep, and we have to be in unison in our messaging.
Yep. During my presentations, I'll always ask the crowd, how many people here have met with their elected officials in the last year? You get 80, 90 people there. You'd be lucky if you get 10 hands that go up. Out of these 10 people, how many people met with them more than once? Then it's even half. How many people here know them on a first name basis? Then it's even half, right? And you need to become a pain in their side. Like my outgoing MLA here, I met him about 10 years ago. I was a pain in his ass.
I find that hard to believe.
I know. Now we chat often. I've got permission to trap on his line. We go out for lunch all the time. I've done a lot of work for him in the past, and I consider him a friend now. And it's because I became a pain in his ass.
Yeah, for sure. So I guess the key takeaway there is, and the thing is elected officials or these candidates will meet with you now because they want your vote. They're dying for votes, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's in certain ridings. Like I know today, the guy said to me, it's going to be bloody close. He thinks it's going to be within a couple percent. So that's telling you that it's really important to get out there and because your vote will make a difference. And they'll listen to you and they'll maybe even say something stupid or make some promises and, write it down and hold them to account and then go back. And then after the election, that's when you hit them up and start building those relationships so that you can call them up because they can, I've had some officials that are great and then some that are not so great. Right. So, but building that relationship, it's much harder for them to say no that if they know you, right. So.
Yeah, completely agree. It's going to be an interesting election for sure. I do think as I said, we're going to see a record turnout. And the other thing, I'll just totally get back to your point there. I was going to ramble, but I know, weird, hey, is a lot of people will say, I didn't meet with my elected official because I didn't know what to say. I'm not an expert in wildlife management. Well, you know what? Neither are they. No word of a lie. I've met with elected officials, bureaucrats at big official meetings and had to explain, okay, this is the front end of a moose and this is the way the antlers face and this is how the antlers work. So guess what? They're not wildlife experts anyway, right? Occasionally you'll get some like down in the East Kootenays there for the NDP, you'll know she knows her stuff about wildlife. My guy up here, Mike Morris, who's retiring, lifelong hunter and trapper, he knows. But the majority of your elected officials and your ones wanting your vote don't know anything. You could go in there and say that this moose here during the rut season, explain what the rut is. He takes off on his rainbow and he goes over behind that mountain there and does his thing, right? They're going to go, okay, so how do I get your vote, right? They don't know. So you don't have to explain anything other than, you know what, wildlife needs the priority. Remember the name or the couple of things. We need legislated objectives, 200 million minimum. That's all you need to tell them.
Yeah. Well, and for anyone that's struggling on that front, like I said, go to our website, wildsheepsociety.com/get involved. And there's an explainer there. It's a 1-page sheet. It's got the 7 issues. Print it out and just hand it to them. Here, this is what we're concerned about. There you go. The work's done for you. And it's about that face-to-face. And if they get 4 or 5 people that do that, they start paying attention because they're like, well, something's a little bit organized here. And they're like, I guess I should probably pay a little bit of attention. And then you start getting some FaceTime. So, yeah, you don't need to be an expert on it. I'm certainly no expert. But if you don't know what to say, just print that thing off and go in. Or, you know what? Maybe you're part of a local fish and game club or you got a buddy that knows about it. Talk to them and find out what are some of the bigger issues. And there you go. That's all you need. And one thing about politicians, when you go in to talk to them, you don't need to be really armed with a bunch of things because they're going to talk your freaking ear off. They love the airtime. They just want to be heard. They don't listen as much as they probably should, in my opinion. The good ones actually do, but they're going to want to talk. So all you need to do is say, hey, these are important. Can you help me? And honestly, like I was in Victoria and my federal minister was, oh my goodness, I can't remember her name right now, for the NDP. And right during the gun ban, I went in and I said, hey, I've got some issues with the gun ban, what Trudeau's doing and blah, blah, blah. And this policy. And of course, the NDP were kind of around Indigenous and farmers and that sort of stuff. They were sort of on the fence with the gun stuff, right? They were still for the ban, but it was kind of it muddied the waters a bit. And she was all over it. She's like, yeah, we're against the Liberals on this one. And it surprised me. I was like, I felt like I had an ally there. I probably, officially we know, well, the Liberals are still in power. So I guess I wasn't that effective, but you get where I'm going with this, right? So
we'll see what's going to happen there with the federal election. There's rumors that he's going to prorogue the government shortly.
Right. Yeah.
So that'll basically stop any debate and lose any bills that are on the table. And we might see an early election there. So yeah. You want to talk firearms?
Yeah.
Well, did you see the debate?
Last night?
Yeah. Or
No, I didn't.
oh man. Remember these thoughts are completely our own. They're not representing anybody we work for, the society. But fucking hell. Um, David Eby called BC's licensed firearms owners, quote, small and invisible, meaning they're minuscule in when it came to anything, and quote, the only ones who use handguns are gangsters. What?
Yeah.
The cool thing there is Rustad threw back. He said BC's not going to expend any provincial resources for the buyback. Still enforce existing gun laws, and he says that he knows that law-abiding gun owners are not the problem. Gangs and illegal importation are. John is up here. He's out the Vanderhoof way, so he's from a rural community, so he's quite well aware. It's ugly. So just there's more at stake here than fish, wildlife, and habitat. And if you're a firearms owner, even if you don't hunt, you have handguns or anything that could be quote unquote scary, right? These NDP don't want you having it, right? It's quite obvious. All you need to do is a quick little Google search on provincial NDP firearms, right? I've said it earlier, 300,000 PAL holders in BC, and we're being blamed for the public safety failures, right? They're reaching at people like you and Greg and anybody here that carries a firearm lawfully and saying that, well, these gang shootings are your fault. And we know that's not the case, right? There was a case, God, was it 2 weeks ago? I took a screenshot of it and I sent it to both of you guys, right? About the Delta Police, right? Where it was great. Delta Police did a thing about duck season, right? Mid-October. It says they did license checks and Boundary Bay firearms licenses, blah, blah, blah. No violations or concerns found. This will tell you right there. Hunters are not the problem. The media will not let that get out there. So, yeah.
Yeah. No, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny. It was when I was talking to the candidate, the Conservative candidate today, he was talking about that soundbite from Eby last night. That
gross.
talking about handguns and black arms and stuff. It was anyway, so interesting. But it's good to know where they stand on that issue for sure. So
remember, firearms are managed federally, but province has a say in it, right? Rustad also said that they're not going to be, like I said, expending provincial resources for this quote unquote buyback. I don't like using the words buyback because, well, you didn't own it in the first place, right? You're using my tax dollars to try and illegally confiscate something that I bought lawfully in the first place, that you, with the stroke of a pen, said, no, that's illegal now because that scares me.
Oh, and I need to say something that kind of might upset you guys, but
I hope so.
When they say we're minuscule or don't show up or we're not worth their thought, it's because we don't give them a reason. We don't show up. We don't vote.
No. Yeah, you definitely not making me upset with
firearms that. Firearms owners, hunters.
Yep.
We famously don't show up, and we need to show up. We need to start showing up, make your voice heard, actually vote. And I got a feeling like, a lot of the people that don't vote in our communities, it's because of the years and years that they probably did vote, and nothing happened. So they feel, I get beat down all the time. Actually, it's like, we fight the fight. A lot of things don't change, but we need more people to show up.
Oh yeah, I've said it dozens, if not hundreds of times over the last 10 years. If we had 100 Gregs, 100 Kyles, and like 3 of me, because nobody needs more than that, we would make one hell of an impact, right? When it came to, imagine if we had 10 times the amount of us, 20 times the amount of us, people like the 3 of us on this call, 20 times the amount of the board of directors of the Wild Sheep Society, the ones that actually show up and give a shit, things would change. Government would start going, you know what? we need to do something. They're outside. They're angry. Our doors being knocked on. Hell, Greg, you saw it in Victoria. We were outside. We were loud on the steps of the legislature, and I got dragged in to represent the resident hunters. They made a point of going, yeah, the hunters are outside. There's Steve upstairs with a couple other people that were dragged in. And same thing happened to me in Prince George. Right, the first rally we held up here, I got dragged inside to meet with Steve Thompson, who was the minister at the time. And he was going, oh, no. This isn't what what are you guys upset about? Perfect. We've got your attention. We realized we were onto something. That's how it kind of steamrolled. And here we are 10 years later on a call right before an election saying the same shit we did 10 years ago. Things need to change. So no, you nailed it on the head there, Greg. Right? You're not going to tick people like me and Kyle off. We're going to go, you know what? You're right. If we got off our asses as a collective community of hunters, sport shooters, conservationists, and those that have had enough with the way wildlife is being quote unquote managed, we would own it. We would absolutely own it. We need to put the beautiful back in beautiful British Columbia. We've let it get away from us. We used to be the Mecca. Kyle, you're old enough to remember this. Great elementary school in the 80s, right? That was, what were we founded on, right? Tourism, forestry, fishing. That was what our coat of arms, right? And all that stuff that we learned about. We've seen forestry mismanaged to the point where we lost 500 jobs in the Prince George area in the last month and a half. We're going to see a major tank. When forests are suffering, wildlife is going to do it. And guess who's going to be the first ones to put on the back burner? Us.
Well, and I think that's where, people need to really sort of sit up and pay attention and, obviously go out and vote in the election. That's our call to action for you. Like, go get involved, make a decision. And again, we're not telling you how to vote. Do your own research, figure out what works for you. And maybe the most important thing is healthcare. Maybe it's something else. And that's cool too. But first of all, get involved, go vote. But then, as hunters and conservationists and legal gun owners and all that great stuff that we sort of espouse as hunter conservationists, we're going to have to start standing up for it, start fighting for it and being vocal, because it's just not going to be there. We've seen a breakdown in the prioritization of that over the last number of years. And the NDP haven't been great on it, but there was breakdowns before that. So we can't paint it on them. So we're going to have to start saying what's important here and start making a difference and standing up. And when these big issues come, like a grizzly bear shutdown, for example, right? Everyone just went, oh, that's not very nice. And there was guys pissed off and they were throwing things around. But what did that do? It just made them angry. It didn't fix anything. Nobody stood up. Nobody held the government to account, and hey, we're part to blame. Like I'm part to blame. I'm not going to cast that blame on anyone else. But so we have to start paying attention, sort of stand beside each other's freaking hunters, right? Like, and conservationists and prioritizing, and because we're so freaking dysfunctional. Like it's only the grizzly bear. Oh, it's only a handgun ban. I don't have a handgun, so I don't care. And it's like, so when do you care? Like, is it when they take away, your Mark V Weatherby that they've taken away, and now, like in some cases, and yeah, that's a bit fear mongering, but it's not. It's the truth. So then, is it when they take your 30-06, or is it when they take your 22s? Like, when it's all gone, is that when we start getting upset? And again, this isn't about gun bans, but it's you get where I'm going, right? So,
well, there's no fear mongering in there, because part of the bill that got wiped out was the wording was something along the lines of variants of the Mauser action. Mm-hmm. And guess what? Every single modern bolt action firearm is based on the Mauser action. They were coming for your 270 Remington, like, pick anything with a modern bolt, they were coming for. And just because it's off the table now doesn't mean it's off the table in the future. We know that. We've seen them pull things and then creatively rewrite them to throw them back out there to get rid of those loopholes. And the only thing that's going to change that is by getting right in their face.
it's the long game, right? They're playing the long game. Like they know they just can't shut down everything. So it's death by 1,000 cuts. Same thing that's going on in Colorado right now with Prop
Yeah, 270, isn't it?
Yeah, 270 or what. Sorry,
Something like
Colorado, I
that.
didn't get, but you get where I'm going with this. So,
Yeah.
but it's like, make all hunting considered trophy hunting, and then we'll just ban trophy hunting, and then we've banned all hunting. So, it's I've horribly oversimplified that, but it's to my point is that we have to start standing by each other and starting like multi-jurisdictional and for everything. If it's legal, like where do you draw the line? And it's interesting when we were out in Ottawa for there was a multi-stakeholder engagement thing through the Conservative Hunting and Angling Caucus, and somebody was like, "Well, why don't we just let that go? Like, just let it go. Like, why? Because it's messy. It's hard to explain. It's like, well, where do you draw that line? So is freaking stepping on the wings of a grouse and pulling its breast off. That's messy too. So who's going to decide if it's a legal, sustainable hunt? How can you sit there and say what's right and what's not? Like we're not the truth police here, right? We have to stand together as a community, and that's most important. Starting today, go to the polls and start voting for some of these important issues.
Yeah, we've seen that before in the past where people go, you know what? Grizzly's not that big of a deal. Let them have it. And they didn't fight for it. We saw less than 1,000 people show up in the public engagement website saying that they were in favor of the grizzly hunt. Out of 115,000 resident hunters that could have taken part, that's just hunters. That's nothing to do with those that don't hunt that, say, you know what, we want science-based wildlife management to reign here. And in that same breath, there was, I think it was less than 4,000 people that showed up saying end it. So we were crushed at 4-1. But guess what? If we would have showed up with even half of our membership, like as licensed hunters, we would have destroyed them. Absolutely destroyed them. And that was a public opinion poll. No matter how they try and dance it up, it was a public opinion poll, right? They wanted to know where they stood on when it came to closing the hunt. Were they in danger of not being reelected or being elected in the first place? And the answer was yes. Yeah. So that's why it became a party stance. That's why it's still a party stance. That's why they're leaning on those sound bites of don't let John Rustad reopen the trophy hunt or the trophy grizzly hunt, whatever they're saying.
Yeah, for sure. Well, little call to action. El Presidente, what's the scoop here? How do we get people to get out and vote?
Oh man,
You're buying whiskey for everybody that votes?
Everyone that votes, you're getting whiskey. I honestly, I don't know. Like I've had so many side conversations lately since we've started just pushing online and pushing an e-blasts and kind of spreading our get involved for the provincial election. And I think you got to talk to your friends and your family and just let them know you want them to vote and why they should vote. Don't have to tell them who to vote for unless they want to know your opinion, but like there's just been a lot of conversations with folks lately on why I think you should vote. And, I've got my issues with wildlife the way it is right now. Like that's one of my biggest things. It's one of my biggest cares. Family first, wildlife second for me, or it's kind of all big. Wildlife and family is all one big one for me. So, but yeah, no, it's a hard one. It's a hard one to speak on and how to get people out to vote because we just can't get them to do it. So it's important. I don't think people realize how important it actually is. And, we do have the voice to make a difference, and we just got to fucking make a difference. Like we got to show up and we got to do it.
Yeah. If we had that, same as Greg, if I had that magic button, that answer, other than whiskey, because that would get really expensive. But then again, maybe not, because we're pretty complacent. So it'd only be 3 or 4 drinks we'd have to buy. But we would own it, right? If we knew what would be that call to action to get hunters and everybody off their asses to go to the polls and then afterwards hold their elected officials accountable, we'd make millions, right? We could sell the the formula around the world because, as you mentioned, Kyle, Colorado's dealing with it right now, and we know Washington has dealt with it, and California with their bear hunt, and back east, Nova Scotia, I think it was, with they're trying to reopen a spring bear hunt, and we see it with Africa, and you name it. They're coming at us from all sides. And the minute we can start coming together as a united community, starting in our own backyard, and showing people that, you know what, 110,000 resident hunters swayed the vote and made wildlife a priority. It went into legislation. All their targets are met. It would encourage people. All right, I think we just need a couple of wins, a couple of successes, and we'll be good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. Awesome. Okay, well, I think we've given people a few things to think about. And yeah, so go out, get involved, vote, and then more importantly, well, go see your MLA, your candidates this week. Just easy peasy, easy. Like I picked up the phone, I emailed the guy, he emailed me back, and he said, "You want to go for coffee?" And now, not all the candidates have done that. I've met with two of the three, actually two of the three parties. I haven't talked to the independents yet, but pretty easy to do. Might be a little different if you're in like EB's riding or Rusted's riding. Those guys are pretty popular. But go talk to them, get their position, make your mind up, get in there. Like you said, you can vote starting tomorrow. The advanced polls are open, and you can do the mail-in thing, but you're getting tight on that. So, but again, election day is 10 days from today. And then afterwards, once they get their riding offices sorted out, go in there and meet those people and let them know that you mean business. And if you've met them beforehand, you've already got a kinship with them. It's going to make a big difference. So if you're going to meet with them, now's the time to do it because they want your vote. They'll meet with you generally.
Yep. Agreed.
Awesome. Anything we're missing, guys?
My whiskey, Greg.
Do better.
How do I get my whiskey?
Better. Be better.
Just be better, everyone.
Perfect way.
Awesome. Well, it's going to be interesting. I'm really keen to see. The 19th is going to be a big day. See the outcome, because I know for sure with all the malarkey going on with the United Party, it's not going to be linear unless for some reason like the NDP really sock it or the Conservatives really sock it to them, which I think it's going to be close. But then we've got the Greens and we've got all these independents, and there's going to be I don't think we're going to really, if it's close, we're not going to know anything for the first month. I don't think it'll be a while. It's going to take some time for the dust to settle on it. That's my prediction. All right, gentlemen. Thank you. Steve, Greg, appreciate you guys. And vote, get out and vote, go talk to your MLA candidates, go vote.